time for the rest of the week and just to be here and be present together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't ask Saul, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyhow, Saul, and embarrass you to death perhaps. But if you were here Sunday for his communion remarks, I want to tell you, if I had a time in which I was listening to the heartbeat of God, it was through Saul's presentation, his remarks at the Lord's table on Sunday. I just thought, this is what it's all about. He talked about actually a little bit of what we got in here from Jonah Mays tonight, the light, and how many of us are those lights. And in a sense, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but Saul, thank you. It made a lot of sense, I think, to a lot of us as I look around, and it was right here. It was from the heart, and it was really good. If you haven't been with us, we've been talking about the heartbeat of God, listening, trying to sense a strong feeling from that. And that's going to be our continuation again tonight. We're going to be starting, in of all places, Genesis chapter 18. So if you're looking for a spot to go to, head over there, because we're going to come back to Isaiah in just a little while too. But Genesis chapter 18 is where we will be starting. I left you with 3 items last week that I hoped you would see that these are things that would please God, would delight Him, would put a smile on His face. And those 3 things were mentioned in the book of Jeremiah. Steadfast love. And the idea with steadfast love is the fact that it's not selfish, it's given to people. And as we give steadfast love to people, it's not because I have to do it, it's because I want to do it. And it's really a thrilling thing to think about. The underlying factor of God is all about this steadfast love. Secondly, righteousness. Righteousness, well, we treat people fairly, kindly, compassionately. And I don't, as I look over this group and as I think about the people here at North MacArthur, I think the word righteousness fits into what we're talking about and where we're headed. And thirdly, justice. Along with righteousness, we treat people like a mother and father raising a child. So we have these 3 items to build on for this week. Now, within these 3 actions, and these are on that outline, and if you notice, I even threw some fill in the blanks. I don't have the crayons for you tonight, but if you brought a pencil, yes, you get to fill some things in that we sometimes call as educators lower level thinking skills. Okay? It's nothing really big, it's just thinking skills. But within these 3 actions, we bring God to the reality of the communities we have relationships with. Now, let me say that again. Within these 3 actions, steadfast love, righteousness, and justice, we bring God to the reality of the communities we have relationships with. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, and here's one of your fill-ins. See, I'm even giving you the answers on this test. You've got them. But number 1, we exemplify God, our Creator. It sends a message. We're projecting something. Somebody's looking through the lenses of our eyes to see what's going on. I've had people in the church community say, look, I can't do much for the church. I'm not a good song leader. I'm not a good teacher. I can't serve as a deacon. Maybe I don't want to be an elder. I can't be a preacher. I can't. And all along, there are things we can do. Just your very existence with people tells people you're a Christian. Tom was a fellow, and I'm not sure that was his name, but I think it was, whom I worked with one summer way back when. I was probably 24, 25 years old. We We had the ideal job in the summer. It was in an ice cream plant. And we worked, I think we worked eating the ice cream. I'm not quite sure what other things we did, but we had this ideal position. But we had to work in a cold room, which was 30 below zero. And I worked my way in Canton, Ohio at Borden's Ice Cream for 4 years, 4 summers, and it was one of the neatest jobs. All my friends were working at Republic Steel and couldn't hardly catch their breath. I was working in a cold room and I was having fun. And this young man came in to me, very impressionable. He was probably 4 or 5 years younger than me, but Tom said to me one day, they had a heated room. You had to come out every once in a while just to get warm from this 30 below zero. And he said, there's something about you that I'm not sure how to explain. I said, oh boy. Well, Tom, tell me what it is. He said, you're not like the other guys who work here. Again, I'm not sure where he's going with this, but I'm going to listen at least. He said, you don't swear and cuss and tell dirty stories and fish for different things that, we probably shouldn't be doing. Why? Why aren't you like the rest of them? They were all good guys. I mean, I got along with them, but I never saw the need to say or do anything that would promote Satan perhaps more than would God. And I don't remember what I said, but it was probably something like, Tom, I have a God. We just graduated from Lipscomb, and Bible classes every day in chapel and all of those kind of things. We had ingrained in us a little bit of this Christianity thing. And so I kind of had the feeling he was fishing a little bit. He never talked to me about that afterwards, but I was always impressed with the fact that maybe I don't have to do all those other things in the church. All I have to do is to be a good Christian, is to just react to Christianity. And I think that's one of the things when we think of steadfast love, righteousness, and justice. Second of all, we build our own spiritual strength by doing this. Musicians are going to probably tell you that if they're not going to practice, they're not going to be good musicians. Bodybuilders are going to say, well, I have to lift weights, and I have to eat the right foods, and I have to do all these things, and I'm going to be strengthening my body with all the things that I know make me stronger. Athletes will tell you pretty much the same thing. For me to be involved in athletics, I've got to do certain things. I don't like to do them all the time, but it strengthens me. And so when we're talking about these 3 items, we're thinking about, man, I've got to build my spiritual strength. Our communities then will see our roadmap for godly obedience. The communities that you work in, the communities that you have neighbors around, the communities of your own family are going to realize at some point they're sharing something with me, but they're not really coming right out and saying, you have to be a Christian. I can see it in them. And I don't know about you, but I love the church, and I love the people here, and I love the people when I visit other congregations. It's really great to think about not just Sunday mornings and Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, but it's good to be thinking about all of the things that come in between and the relationships that we have with each other. Tonight, we're going to take a microscopic look into righteousness and justice. We want to go a little deeper into these blessings, and 3 words that we're going to talk about is, these things make God act. He's going to take off with us, and we'll probably be flying a little bit low, but we want to make sure we get all of these things down and how they adjust to those 3: steadfast love, righteousness, and justice. Let's begin with prayer. Would you bow with me? Father, there's so much in this world that tears us from you and distracts us from you. And yet there are so many things that you have given us and offered to us through steadfast love and righteousness and justice that we can't ignore that. We know that it makes you smile, that it delights you, that it pleases you when your people, and this has happened from the very beginning of time, when your people do what you want them to do. And Father, tonight as we study, as we go through the lesson on these three items. Help us to feel the pulse, to feel your heartbeat. Help us to grow in love for you throughout all time. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, let's start it this way. Who in your life do you have or have you had a pulse with? Somebody that maybe made a really big impression upon you. They made a difference in your life. It could be a parent, it could have been a sibling, it could have been a teacher, it could have been a neighbor, it could have been a member of the church. Think for just a minute, and if you're the first one to say something, you'll pass this class, okay? Give me some ideas into your life of the folks who you really felt made a difference in your life.
A preacher that baptized me, Ed Sanderson out in California, at Alamo Drive Church of Christ in Vacaville. He was on a Lockheed Martin scholarship. He was a USC grad. He was going to be a lawyer, then he ended up teaching college, and then along the way he became a preacher. But his Bible classes were just what I needed when I was in 5th grade. I'll never forget his. We taught the wisdom literature, just as an example, but he taught our junior high and our high school, and just the amount of knowledge. And then when he put a sermon together, he was more like a college instructor than he was really a preacher. But I mean, everything he did was just packed full of information. You left and you took things away from it, and he talked about the different types of ways, like for instance in Proverbs and in Ecclesiastes and stuff, like, the way of God is like this, or you talk about, enumeration, if it says, 7 times God, does this, or 3 times this, he would explain all of that, and it just brought a depth. And so, I'll never forget that. It served me so well as a young man.
I like the idea of it brings depth. We're going to come back to that one. Hold that for me, okay? Anybody else? Pam?
Back home in Ohio.
Good place to be.
It's the churches are smaller, and there's many women who go by themselves, and from all even people I grew up with, where it was just the life we planned. Hauled all the kids. Preacher back in Struthers, his mom was a Christian, but his dad wasn't, and he would take like the carburetor off the car so she couldn't go to church, and she'd call and get a ride, but their son ended up becoming a preacher, and then later on he got baptized. But it's a lot of cases where these women, it's their example, that B worked so much that they did whatever they could to get their kids to church, and then later their grandkids, and some of them eventually, guy in their 70s got baptized. They never thought, he thought like the roof would cave in, but just the example of it being so important and them doing whatever it took, even though it caused so much strife within the household.
But God was first. He was the priority.
Right.
Anybody else?
For me, just as my immediate family, it was more of people that were in my life all times during the week, not just Sundays and Wednesdays. I particularly think of a church camp counselor that was always there, and didn't just see us once a summer. Was truly in our life, and she made a big impact on me.
Okay.
That's the key, is constant, really truly in somebody's life.
Right. Anybody else?
I had a 5th grade team teachers, husband and wife. They were pretty well off. I don't know how I knew that, other than I was at their house a few times, and it just was a really nice house. But they would invite all sorts of people to Thanksgiving, and I thought that made a big impact, because we tend to be real selfish during the holidays, and you want to be with your family, and not people who you don't know that well or definitely have less than you. And so I thought they really made an impact, and they had some really good Bible classes also, very practical, talking about drugs at fifth grade. You know, I didn't know anything about drugs, but they sure shed some light on the subject, and they were just really a good, and my class was older than their children, but they did a very good job of relating to us.
You see, as you go from person to person, you're hearing all of these examples of people, and back then, or whenever that was, probably none of us knew that this was ever going to become a Wednesday night Bible class topic. But along the way, we've got these folks that fed us with these good things. Sometimes we want to go straight to our parents. That's a good place to start. But other times, it may not be parents, and it may not be immediate family. Jeannie Gallagher was a third grade teacher in the last school that I was principal at. And Jeannie was just a fantastic teacher. And every year we would have evaluations, and I would get with each of the staff, and we'd talk about goals. We'd talk about what they'd done that was really pleased to them this year, and what kids gave them problems, and what she could do better. Jeannie was one of those ladies that when I got with her, I said, Jeannie, you've got to share with me. I'm giving you an A+. That isn't what we gave them, but I'm going to give you really good marks. But I want you to share with me what it is that gets you going every day. And she said, she was real formal with me. She always called me Mr. Miser, and that humbled me. But she said that if I hadn't give you a word, the word I would give you is passion. She said, I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've dreamed about it. I've exercised all of the things that I needed to do to become a teacher. I have this passion. I wake up every morning and I can't wait to be there. I go to bed every night thinking, wow, tomorrow's going to be another exciting day. I can't wait to be, the kids knew this, the parents knew this. She had a passion. I'll never forget that day, and it's one of those things when I've wondered time to time, do I have that same passion to be a Christian? Do I wake up every morning saying, I can't wait to serve God today. I can't wait. I love the church. I love the people. I can't wait to have the same passion for the church as she had for education. Let me go back to the questions. Those of you who answered, and maybe some who want to tell about this, but why? Some explanation. Why do we admire the people we admire? Why does that come into play?
I don't know if this answers your question. I wanted to say this a second ago. I didn't have something specific I wanted to mention, but I just think two key words are kind of a theme here: passion and investment. You know, the investment of time and emotion. If you have something that you love and you want to talk about it, then you're investing that time in, whether it's your kids or whether it's at your job, and you're investing in those people, trying to help them in some way. And I think it's in how we invest in life.
And that's a word we're going to use tonight, because it's kind of a synonym for another word that I want to use with it. But I do think we find investments, whether we give it or whether they give it back to us. We know when someone is making a difference in our lives just because of the very things you all have said so far. Why? Why?
Something we want to be like,
So it's an emulation kind of thing. I hope that I can be like this person in one aspect of my life or the other. Sure. Again, for the sake of time, we can go on and on and on about why all of these things we feel good about, because there's also a certain amount of trust and a certain amount of respect that has been built between you and that person that you're talking about. And I don't use the respect very loosely. I really believe that we've got this respect for God. We've got this respect for the people that we know have made a difference in our lives. Shank says in his book, when justice and righteousness get abandoned by a society, God explodes into action. When justice and righteousness get abandoned by a society, we could even throw in there a community of people, a family of people, whatever that community is, if it's abandoned, God explodes into action. So what's meant by that statement? What is Shank trying to tell us about this feeling of steadfast love and of justice and of righteousness? Chapter 18, if I could get someone to read just verses 17, 18, and 19. But I want you to hold on that for just a minute and let me go one direction further, and then we're going to come back to it. Before the Bible mentions anything about God's steadfast love, mercy, or truthfulness, Genesis raises the issue of his righteousness and his justice. You see, Genesis calls righteousness and justice the way of the Lord. The way of the Lord. And I had to ask myself the question as I studied this week, what is the way of the Lord? What significance is there to this way of the Lord? Now, I'm going to ask that question in just a minute, but somebody go ahead and read 18, 17, 18, and 19 for us.
Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him, to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him."
There it was. Did you hear it in verse 19? There's the way of the Lord. Read that verse one more time.
For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him, to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him.
The way of the Lord is what's right and what's just. And that's what we've been talking about tonight, a little bit last week. But what we want to find out is, we're going to go a little deeper. After God promises Abraham the blessing of a great nation, you can follow this on your outline, but Genesis follows with a series of roadblocks. Now, I don't like the word roadblock. I think more of it being a bump in the road, maybe even a hiccup along the way. But listen to the things that has happened very quickly in Genesis so far. Abraham's wife Sarah is taken into Pharaoh's household before she can have a child, Genesis chapter 12. Lot becomes a possible heir, but there's a conflict in their relationship, Genesis chapter 13. We know these stories. We can read about them. We know about them. We know these characters. Hagar provides Abraham with a son, but it's not the chosen son. But she and Sarah don't get along, Genesis chapter 16. Then Eliezer of Damascus, a mere servant, is suggested as a successor to Abraham, Genesis chapter 15. But we know the rest of the story. Abraham and Sarah, they're up in age. They conceive and they bear the promised son, Isaac. And his needs and his seed does as God has promised. God has exploded into action. These are roadblocks. These are bumps in the road. These are hiccups. But I'm telling you something. God is in action when we think he isn't even there. Now, we're going to come back to Abraham in just a couple of minutes. Why is righteousness and justice so important to God? This is not a trick question. This is just one of those, what do you think? Why are they so important to God?
It's his nature.
Nature? It's God's nature. Okay? Any other thoughts? God is aware, let me see if you believe in this, but God is aware of roadblocks that prevent us from making God smile. And he wants us to fight these off, situations that would conform to him. Listen to Sarah and Abraham's reaction to God's news. Now, this is really one in chapter 18. I really need somebody who will read verse 1 through 15 of chapter 18. Okay? So catch your breath, take a deep breath. And if you'll begin verse 1 and go through 15 of 18.
You need to read her out loud?
Yeah. Please, I'm sorry. I should have said.
Okay, sorry.
Duh.
Then the Lord appeared to Abraham at the oaks of Mamre while he was sitting in the entrance of his tent during the heat of the day. He looked up, and he saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to meet them and bowed to the ground. Then he said, "My Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, please do not go on past your servant. Let a little water be brought, and you may wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. I will bring a bit of bread so that you may strengthen yourselves. This is why you have passed your servant's way. Later you can continue on." "Yes," they replied, "do as you have said." So Abraham hurried into the tent and said to Sarah, "Quick, knead 3 measures of fine flour and make bread." Meanwhile, Abraham ran to the herd and got a tender choice calf. He gave it to a young man who hurried to prepare it. Then Abraham took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set them before the men. He served them as they ate under the tree. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "There in the tent," he answered. The Lord said, "I will certainly come back to you in about a year's time, and your wife Sarah will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent behind him. Abraham and Sarah were old and getting on in years. Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. So she laughed to herself, "After I have become shriveled up and my Lord is old, will I have delight?" But the Lord asked Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Can I really have a baby when I'm old?' Is anything impossible for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will come back to you, and in about a year she will have a son." Sarah denied it. "I did not laugh," she said, because she was afraid. But he replied, "No, you did laugh."
Their disbelief in what we have just listened to and we've read was a major factor in a roadblock for Sarah and Abraham. Not only did they laugh, they lied about it. And it was a situation that God is not going to smile about. It did not bring delight to the Lord. It did not bring a happiness to him. You did what you've done. God's faced this kind of unrighteousness since the beginning of time. He's battled with the Israelites. He has had problems all the way back to Adam and Eve. And it's created this roadblock. Now, let's go to your roadblocks. What are some of, well, I'm stepping on a limb with this one, so we'll see how far this one goes, but what are some of your roadblocks in life? What are some things that cause you to, I'm distracted, things going to happen? Anybody want to?
Getting our own way a lot of times. Self-doubt, fear.
Getting our own way, in our own way, out there with fears and various things, just selfish kind of things maybe. Okay? Any other roadblocks that you're finding? It's tough to get through some of these. It's a hiccup. It's a place in the road that gets rough to go over.
I find that I am so busy with kids and life that sometimes I just don't give God the attention that he deserves.
We get busy. We have things that are very important to us. Someday we'll talk about the difference in importance and urgencies, okay? Because there's a difference in those two words. For hopefully not anything that will incriminate me in front of Kay, I'm the great procrastinator. Now, I've done well to say that word, but never do today what I can put off until tomorrow, okay? And as I see some of you smile, I think we all have some of those little ingredients. And I know you won't believe this one. Another roadblock for me has been when I was growing up as a kid, and when I had hair, it was red. And I was always told by my mother, you have a red-headed temper. And so, okay, I get angry every once in a while. And I do things when I'm frustrated that I shouldn't do. I'm the half-empty glass of water. She's the half-full glass of water in our house, okay? So everything that pops up that we need a decision made on, I don't think we can. Yes, we can. We can do that. So you have to have people like that. But we all share these roadblocks. We've all got some things and what do they do to us? Well, sometimes they tear down our faith and our faithfulness to where we should be when it comes to being with God. So, what does he want to find in us that will make him smile and bring delight to his heart? And you're sitting there thinking, Wayne, you've already said righteousness and justice and steadfast love. Yes, I have. And those actually are the right answers. That's what God is looking for us to perform. Now, Shanks says God is not willing to simply value justice and righteousness. He wants it practiced in the human community. You see, how do I want to say this? When we look at steadfast love and we think about righteousness and justice, they're not mantle pieces. They're not up there for us to admire and to say, those are okay. I like them on my mantle, but don't put them in my heart. I want to be known maybe as a righteous person. I want to be known as someone with steadfast love, but I struggle, God, with getting them to my heart so I can hear your heartbeat and know that these things should be in my life as I react and as I act all of the time. Is it safe to say that the fruits of the Spirit mentioned in Galatians chapter 5, don't go there, is worthless unless they are practiced? I think we have to ask, how does the fruit of the fruit in the Spirit become validated? How are they more than just valuable mantelpieces? Obvious answer? Action, practice, validate them by doing.
I heard a guy today, and he said, if you don't have a good root, you're not going to have a good fruit. So, and he was saying he was talking about high schoolers and stuff in Christianity and things. And he's like, a lot of these kids, they went growing in church, but do they have a really good root? Do they believe that Genesis says when it was 6 days, it was 6 days, and all the way through, the Bible's consistent. But yeah, that stuck with me today. Good root, good fruit. And then today I literally underlined in the Beatitudes, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness because they will be filled. And I thought, unless you're hungering and thirsting for it, you're not going to be filled. If you're not filled, it's hard to have those fruits of the Spirit, right? To segue into that. If it's not at the root of who you are, and if you're not making it actively the root of who you are, it's hard to have those fruits manifest in your life.
Yeah, and then we get busy with things, and we begin to lose track and focus of what we're doing in our lives. We've been generating thoughts on Sunday morning about keeping our eyes focused on Christ. But I think there's a lot of times Monday comes and Tuesday comes, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we get all the way back to Sunday again and say, did I hunger and thirst for righteousness along the way this week? It is hard. And it's very difficult sometimes for us to put those things aside, even if there are children, and even if there are parents that we are taking care of, even if it's neighborhood things, if it's school things, we have difficulty with this. Turn over to Isaiah now, chapter 1. That's where I was intending to go to start with, but I thought these were important things for us to take a look at before we got there. So that was the introduction. So get ready for the next 7 minutes to be the... and I don't hear the bell well, so Carrie, you'll have to tell me. Kay always hears it, but I just never do. Anyhow. The opening 5 chapters of Isaiah, they're amazing. Isaiah is speaking on behalf of God to Jerusalem. Jerusalem's in a mess right now, okay? They have got themselves to where, and we're going to review some of the things that they're doing. The opening 5 chapters, though, 8th century BC, God is unhappy with them. And I asked the question, have you ever been unhappy with your children? Now, you're not, I didn't say you abuse your children. I said, have you ever been unhappy with them? Child or children, okay? You say, I have 1 child, so I can't be happy with my children. Some of us have 5, and that takes a while. But have you been? Sure we have. Now in our family, again, I'll go back to us. I was the reactionist. She was the one who was the responder to their needs. I was the one that felt like, I can break them and you'll pick up the pieces. That was good to have somebody in the household that we responded to or reacted to. Jeffrey was our the oldest one. He was our mischievous one, okay? I'll see him tomorrow when I travel to Texas, but I'll have to tell him I was talking about him tonight. But not a bad kid. It just, let me put it this way. I got to know the junior high and senior high principals very, very well when he was in junior high and high school, because I got a call from them almost every day. You know what your son has done today? It never happened in the elementary school because he was with Kay, and she pretty well took care of him when he was in elementary school. But at any rate, you deal with these things because we understand how kids can make us feel unhappy, displeased with some of their actions. It got so bad one time, Kay was, her meanest streak was when she packed his bag and set it by the front door when he was junior high school? Somewhere, 6th grade or whatever, just said, if you can find a better place, there's the door. We'll let you back in when you come back to us. I thought that was a little strict. But, she knew what she was doing. And when it was all said and done, he never did take her up on it. He kind of changed his mind about being out on his own and so on and so forth. But she did pack a bag a couple of times and kept it going for him. Kids have a way. We as people, I'm trying to go to where God is with this. Has he ever packed our bag and set it by the door and says, if you can find a better church to work with, go. If you think that discipline is not in my act as your guide, I've got news for you. I can be unhappy with you as well, which he was. And as we're studying in Isaiah, he really told these people, this is a mess. Look at verses 1 through 3 of chapter 1. Now, I'd like for someone to read out loud. I'll make that clear. But first 3 verses of chapter 1.
The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. Children have I reared and brought up, but they have rebelled against me. The ox knows its owner, and the donkey its master's crib. But Israel does not know, my people do not understand.
What he is saying, what Isaiah is saying to the people, can you just imagine? Now, he's not standing out there on the porch just in a nice little way of just saying, hey, it's okay, kids, it's all right, you've done some bad things, but we'll get over it. Isaiah, he's letting them have it. He's telling them in this speech, you don't know God. How would you react? Somebody comes to your house and somebody comes to you in worship and say, you don't know God. I do too. I do. Listen, they were less aware of God than the animals were of their masters. What Stephen just read for us, an ox knows its owner and a donkey can find its master's crib better than you can find your God, your master. Because they did not know God, their community lacked justice and righteousness. Now look at verse 21, same chapter. Verse 21. Stephen, go ahead. Since you had the first 3 verses, I'll give you the chance to read verse 21 of chapter 1.
How the faithful city has become a whore, she who is full of justice, righteousness lodged in her, but now murderers.
Listen to this. How sad to see faithfulness turn into unrighteousness. Do you all know what you've done? You've turned from something that was really good to something bad. Do you sense the heart of God here? How would you describe God's heart right now?
Pretty angry.
Pretty angry. Disgusted, frustrated. Think of humble ways God can say, my heart. I'm bleeding tears for you because you are my promised people. Sure, it's like when our children turn from us or do things that are alien to God's will, and we as parents have to respond. But can we detail? Look, I'm going to do these very quickly. They're on your outline. This is what's happened. Let's find out how Isaiah tells the inhabitants of Jerusalem. He says, first of all, verse 17, chapter 1, they oppress the people and do not take care of the orphans or the widows. Verse 23, they take bribes. Verse 23, they abuse the vulnerable in court. 5 and 8, chapter 5, verse 8, in their greed they accumulate houses and land. Verse 11, while others suffer, they spend their time in self-indulgence. Verse 20, they turn morality upside down, calling good evil and evil good. Verse 23, they rob defenseless people of their rights. Doesn't this sound like an ugly mess that Jerusalem has gotten themselves into? Do you spot righteousness, justice, and steadfast love in any of these verses? I'm sorry. It's just simply, it's not there. I've been known to say sometimes, elders meetings, and now I got to quit. And in some of the different meetings as a principal that I was involved with, I would always tell people, listen, it's easy to identify the problems. We just can't or don't want to determine the solutions. I've been in meetings where we've gone, let's say, an hour. 45 minutes of the time is determining what the problem is. There's a problem, there's a problem, there's a problem, there's a problem. Okay, now we've got 10 minutes to get the solutions ready. We have got to be better solution-oriented people in the church, in our families, in our communities, in our jobs, more solution-oriented than we are problem-oriented. I think we all know the problems. We just need to get back to the solutions. Now, I'm not done, but you don't want to stay.
I got time.
Next week, we're going to talk, I'm going to finish up. I'll do it quickly. The introduction will be a lot less, and we'll get through a few more things next week because there's a lot to be said. Isaiah is going to tell the people, here's what you got to do. I don't want to leave this in a negative kind of way. I want us to see you've got to do some things. Let's fix it. Let's come up with some solutions to the problems that we have. God's with you as we do these things. Just listen to him. And then we're going to talk about even Sodom and Gomorrah. This pops up in verses 9 and 10 of chapter 1. Where did Sodom and Gomorrah come from out of all of this stuff? That was centuries ago. And all of a sudden, you bring this up to us. And just some of the things that we'll see as we get into this. We've got 2 more weeks. Maybe we'll get through all of this in that time. Thank you for your comments. Let's go to God in prayer as we leave. Father, it's exciting to look at the mistakes, maybe historically, that your children and the record that we have in the Bible of what it was like. We can only follow this second-handedly. We weren't there. But we can feel your heartbeat. We can feel the frustration because we're parents here. And those of us who are know how loving we can be to our own children and how loving you are to us as your children. Father, we have an eternity with you to get things fixed here. And Father, we want to be there with you when that time comes. Bless our travels home tonight. Watch over those who are sick. Help us, Father, to live for you each day. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. See you next Wednesday. Well, we'll see you before then, but we'll see you here next Wednesday.